But you posted to Twitter or to
Let's
X?
get started. We're live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to California Free Radio. I'm Mike Netter. We're happy to be back here after the Thanksgiving week. I hope everybody had a great holiday, one of the great American holidays. And most importantly, we have so much to be thankful for. One of them, of course, isn't the governor of California, and we'll be getting to that later in the show. But again, to remind everybody, in case you've forgotten a week, I am Mike Netter. You can follow me at Netter Mike on Facebook under my real name, Mike Netter, on LinkedIn, and make sure you subscribe to Netter News because it's free and you have that kind of money. As always, or most of the time, I'm accompanied by Scott Piotr at Tax Fighter on Twitter and Kurt English, who, Kurt, you're still dressed for Halloween. You haven't changed clothes since the end of October?
Thanksgiving.
It's a very harvesty color. Come on.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's a
we
very
didn't
harvesting
have
color.
our show Thanksgiving week, so here you go.
I'm happy to say that. Everyone out there, we need your help as we always do. We always want your money and you could contribute to us. But most importantly, if you are on Facebook, as I share this to the Rebuild California public page, help us by spreading the word. California Free Radio, unfiltered, uncensored. We could do anything we want. And frankly, I never really have cared and I don't. Gentlemen, in the last 2 weeks, there's been an amazing amount of stuff going on. And I want to start at the top in the presidential race, but not with Donald Trump. Let's start with Joe Biden. And I don't know that Joe realizes he pardoned his son or Hunter, but a lot of people did. Let's start with the input on that because even the Democrats are going, what the I mean, seriously, he promised us he wouldn't do it. And there's other things breaking in that tonight. Scott, why don't you lead us off on that?
Well, I thought it was a crack up. I mean, everybody knows about it. And, oh, yeah. I never, the media is trying to not cover for the fact that he lied to us, 20 times or 50 times. So what's new? He's just a big liar. And, but the thing that I think the media is obviously glossing over, I don't know if they're doing it on purpose or whatever. Really, he's pardoned himself by pardoning our buddy Hunter. As a lot of other commentators have probably already pointed out, what's really happened is all of those things that Hunter did pointed to Joe. He was the big guy after all, right? He was the big guy who got his 10%. And by stopping all the investigation and all the criminal activity towards Hunter, really what he's doing is getting himself off the hook. In fact, would it surprise you if he actually pardoned himself
And all his family members, his brother, his wife, everybody. Because the Biden crime family has made so much money selling influence, Ukraine, all these foreign countries. He'll just pardon himself and everyone else, which, by the way, he has the absolute right to do under the Constitution. Do you know that the pardon power came from the power of the King of England? It just carried over into our Constitution.
Well, and it's designed, my understanding of it is it's designed to show mercy. So if there's extenuating circumstances, the hardness of the law, and we're a country of laws, theoretically, Democrats don't acknowledge that, of course, but he is under the law. And it was a way to provide an out for somebody who was in the wrong place at the wrong time, got nailed, and from a mercy standpoint, wanted to give him a break, right? So he's totally able to do it. I don't know if you guys saw the opinion that the judge on Hunter Biden's case wrote. He wrote a 5-page opinion, which basically is the bottom line comes down to, yes, Biden is totally within his constitutional authority to grant a pardon. He is not within his constitutional authority to try to rewrite history and try to explain that, hey, he was not treated fairly in the justice system, which he controls, which he used against Trump, and all of the different things about how he was, under the influence, he shouldn't be held liable, all these things. He goes, the judge in his five-page dissertation basically said, no, that's not true. He was given all of these lenience and proven aspects of his case. And so the guy's guilty. He even confessed on a couple of the charges. So
Well, he pleaded guilty to them. It's interesting too. I want to clarify something that I clarified on my X feed this week because, shocking as it seems to everybody, I've never received a pardon, so I wanted to research this very carefully, just in case I ever need one, gentlemen. Presidential pardon only covers federal crimes, okay? So it doesn't cover crimes against an individual state, which Hunter may still be liable for, but wait, there's more. And it also doesn't cover civil liabilities. So let's be clear here, the presidential pardon only is against federal crimes. What's also rather strange about the Hunter Biden pardon is Joe, his alleged dad. I'm going to say alleged. We'll leave it alone at that. Okay.
Tell him the big guy.
The big guy. All right. Decided to give him a blanket pardon from federal crimes from 2014 to 2024. But there's a little bit more to this story that the judge is talking about. So Hunter already pleaded guilty, and when he pleaded guilty to some of these crimes, he did not give up his right under a pardon to still have to testify in front of Congress. But he does, in effect, waive a lot of his rights to indict himself under the Fifth Amendment because he no longer can indict himself because he has a pardon. So he could still be called in by the Republican Congress to testify. He can refuse, he can kick, and I'm sure he will. But there's a lot more to this story to be told, a lot of which the judge was basically referring to. And Scott, God bless you as an architect for reading those 5 pages, because I certainly didn't. I did publish the story. But talk a little bit. Let's hear some comments on that, because it's pretty obvious there is Biden corruption.
Biden crime family. Well, here's a question I want to ask Kurt. So, based on what you just said, what I'm hearing is that he no longer has the right to plead the fifth, right? He can't sit there and say, I refuse to answer on the grounds that might incriminate me, because he's not going to be incriminated. He's been pardoned.
And he's already pleaded guilty.
So if he actually goes before Congress, Kurt, this is my question, and they ask him to testify and he goes, I'm pleading the fifth, it's kind of like, well, is that because this is going to indict you, but hey, you've been pardoned, so you can't be indicted, you have to answer. Then can Congress find him in contempt if he refuses to answer?
Well, Congress can find him in contempt with a vote. So the question is, will there be a few rhinos that won't vote for a contempt citation? Or the other thing is, I think Pam Bondi, the incoming Attorney General, will be sure to prosecute when there's a referral from Congress for contempt. Now, as we saw, the Biden administration, when their administration officials didn't show up for congressional hearings, they did nothing. But when Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro showed up, who were didn't show up, they were Trump allies, they prosecuted them and put them in jail. So we've had a 2-track justice system. Democrats don't have to follow the law. Republicans are persecuted. That's the Biden's legacy.
Well, in a way, I would take that a little further. It's the elite, because the average Joe Democrat would still be prosecuted. It's only the elite Democrats or the Democrat Party elites that have been seemingly above the law, or like you say, two-tiered system.
Well, let's pretend I'm slightly confused here, because Biden said, I'm pardoning my son because the justice system has been what's the word is?
Prejudice against his son.
Against his son. Thank you very much, Kurt, for bringing me back to the English light. All puns intended with your name. But I'm a little confused here. Biden controls the Justice Department, so exactly how deep did it have to go that they did indict the president's son? I mean, I'm scratching my head here and going, yeah, they went after Trump, which didn't work out well for them, by the way, in case you haven't noticed. But how bad does Hunter really have to be that we don't know about, that they actually went after Hunter for tax evasion and possession of a gun as a convicted criminal?
Well, and look at his laptop. Bill Barr,
I'd rather not.
Republican, buried it before the 2020 election. The FBI had it for many years. You don't even know all the crimes that are on there besides the little snippets that you've seen. I mean, Hunter
All
Biden,
the child
Syria,
pornography.
yeah, I mean, child pornography, I mean, just ridiculous stuff. And he was sleeping with his dead brother's wife and got her addicted to drugs. I mean, if there's different levels of scumbagness, he's a super scumbag.
That's true. He's kind of set a whole new standard. We have to come up with a better word than scumbag for Hunter Biden, because I really feel bad insulting all the people that are just ordinary scumbags out there. Because you bring up a good point here, and I don't want to go on too long about Hunter tonight, but this is the president's son. And I said this during the election. I know the election's now over. By the way, Trump won, in case you missed the memo. But, you know, really, when you look at Donald Trump's kids, they're pretty upstanding citizens. When you look at the offspring of Biden, so to speak, and I get it, Bo died of brain cancer, etc., and I get it, there was a lot of trauma in the family. But how bad a dad do you have to be to have Hunter kind of turn out that way to the point where he sleeps with his dead brother's wife? And I want to emphasize that for everybody out there who has any ounce of moral turpitude. And I'm assuming you out there have more than a pound of it. He slept with his dead brother's wife, who, I get it, was probably at a weak moment. I don't blame her. But he did this while he was on crack cocaine, watching porn, hiring prostitutes, and evading taxes. And wait, let's not forget, getting paid by Ukraine for a job he wasn't qualified for. And I'm sure I missed a few boxes because it's really hard, gentlemen, to remember it all, isn't it?
Well, it's go ahead, Scott.
What can you say? I mean, I agree. Well,
Now,
we need to come.
What?
We need to come up with a new word.
We do. We need to come up with a word. And so I leave it to our audience out there. If you go on our feed tonight, please try to think up a better term for Hunter Biden, who will probably belong with Joe, because I don't think scumbag does it justice. But before we leave the pardon portion of our show, I'd like to add there's a strong rumor running around. I was trying to find it on my X feed right now, which, by the way, Elon, I just don't like saying X feed, but I'll leave that alone. Okay. But on my X feed, okay, that Biden may also issue blanket pardons for Fauci and many other members of his administration just to protect them, just in case, because they're worried about Trump coming after them. So give us your comments on
Guess what? Haul him in front of Congress, get him in a perjury trap, and then go after them mercilessly like they did to Trump's people. No problem.
And I would tend to agree with that, but I want to make the point that in today's world, with the pharmaceutical companies raking in as much money they did off COVID, and this is going to roll us to our favorite whipping boy, Gavin Newsom, okay, that why would they have to give immunity to Fauci alone if there wasn't more than meets the eye?
Well, there's also the lab leak in the gain of function lab in China that he funded, which was prohibited to be funded under U.S. law.
True. I mean, there's lots there, but I want to go to the pharmaceutical companies because their link to Gavin Newsom is rather direct. And I want to refresh everybody's memory because as you probably saw on Netter News, which I know out there you get because it's free and you have that kind of money, you can Google Netter News and subscribe to my newsletter. And we focused yesterday on Gavin Newsom and his big rah-rah sis boom boss circus of going to defend California against Trumpism before Trump's done anything with the special session of the legislature that he called. Let's go back a little bit and I'll rotate back to the pharmaceutical companies. Gentlemen, had this big circus for 25 million bucks, which out of a $300 million budget is like Scott buy me lunch at In-N-Out. It's not a hell of a lot of money. Obviously, Scott and Kurt, we talked about this before. Why do you think he's doing that and making such a big circus out of it?
Because he's running for president in 2028. Mike, you know the answer. That was kind of a setup question.
Well,
I'll
I
throw the
think a little
softball
bit
right
more.
back down the middle to you.
I think a little bit more than that. Scott, give me your opinion and I'll give you mine.
Well, obviously, he's running for president, but he's got to make himself relevant to the voters. And he's only got 2 years to do. Well, he's got 4 years for presidency, but he's only going to be in the governor's office for another 2 years. So he's got to scramble to do whatever he can to make himself relevant. That'll hopefully carry him to 2028.
Well, let me hit it both you gentlemen with a bit of breaking news. Kurt says something intelligent before the show. That's the breaking news. Okay. And Kurt, you came up with a really good reason before the show as to another reason that he's doing this. And that is, you do remember Kurt, right?
Yeah, Newsom wants to give $25 million additional to lawyers so they can sue the Trump administration, which is a payoff to his trial lawyer friends from government money.
Boom, boom, boom. And that is the most important. Kurt, that's the smartest thing you said since you met me and said, pleased to meet you.
Since I said the Dodgers beat the Padres in the playoffs.
So Trump, so he's doing this in his official duties as, in his words, to Trump-proof California. And really what you're saying is it's a payoff to his trial lawyer buddies.
Last time during the Becerra administration, okay, as Attorney General, first off, be aware that the 25 million is kind of a down payment. Last time they spent, and by the way, this was for those of you paying attention, approximately 5 years ago, 6 years ago, they spent 42 million on with like 140 cases or some odd suing the Trump administration. That's the administration of California. But for those of you out there that aren't paying attention to these finite details, those lawsuits aren't actually the working lawyers, aren't usually members of the California Attorney General's office.
They're private
outside,
lawyers.
correct. Private lawyers, outside attorneys. And those outside attorneys just happen to be, if our producer had a drum roll, Dan, I'd say roll it now. Lawyers that have contributed to Gavin's campaign. And I want to start to connect some of these dots today because you know what, guys? I think the last time barely we touched on this, but the real estate market in California has had a big blip here in the last 3 weeks, and everybody knows what that is, right? Gavin Newsom bought a really big house for $9.6 million because, of course, he's got 4 kids and everybody needs 15,000 square feet, 4 garages, and 6 acres of property. And it's interesting, no one knows where the money came from. And by the way, you heard his comment about why he bought the house and how he bought it, right?
From a trust?
No, his comment was, hold on, let me repeat it for you. That was it. No comment. He bought it through a trust that was funded, but no one's quite sure where the money came from. Now, what's interestingly enough.
Hold on, time out, Mike. Trusts are private entities, and the source of the money in every trust is not transparent to anybody except the owners and beneficiaries of the trust.
Oh, we know that, Kurt. But let me ask you a question. I get that. And trusts are indeed private entities. But when you're the governor of California, you remember who he bought this mansion from?
A donor?
No. A trust or company that was owned by, another drum roll, please, the governor of Illinois.
You mean the
who's been a
hotel
big
guy?
donor to Gavin over the years. But wait, there's more. Scott, Kurt, Nutter, When we buy a house today, what's generally a stipulation to us buying a house is selling the house rent. Is that fair enough for the average person?
Yeah, the average person usually sells one house and takes their equity in it to put as a down payment on the next house.
Correct. Now, approximately 3 years ago, even though Gavin has the governor's mansion, that's not enough for him and Jennifer and their 4 siblings, which go to private school. And walk through this with me. He mysteriously, through another trust, and there's a lot of stories on that. Kudos to Jennifer Van Laar and Red Steed. I'll actually repost some of those stories. But a $5 million mansion in Fair Oaks, and nobody's sure where the money came from. Now, Kurt, you heard what he got for his $5 million mansion before he bought the $9 million mansion, didn't you?
I did not.
He didn't get anything because he didn't sell it.
That's why I didn't hear, Mike.
That's a good point, Kurt.
The other thing that we haven't heard yet, first of all, as I recall, he hasn't closed escrow yet, but he was going to be a fast escrow, so I'm presuming it's going to close any day. But the other thing that happens is normally normal people need to get a loan to buy a house like that, especially one that size. And
Not
that
if
is,
you're as wealthy as the Pelosi's and the Newsoms.
but he doesn't have family money, so his money comes through, the Biden crime family or something similar, probably, right? Allegedly. I won't try and tell him that he's a criminal. He just acts like one. So the question is he going to actually record a first trust deed against his property with like a bank? Or is it going to be some private equity deal that he's not going to bother to record because there won't be a lien against his property for it?
Or the seller may have lent him the money and be willing to do a private contract rather than not record the lien.
Right. So
Hold
not
on.
have
Let's stop and explore some stuff there. And you gentlemen have really good points. Here's some facts. When he bought the $5 million mansion in Fair Oaks, it was bought for cash. There are no liens against it. Now, Gavin Newsom indeed get a lot of money from the Getty family, who fronted him a lot of money, and his net worth is indeed about $20 million. And by the way, he makes $250,000 as the governor of California, sorely overpaid. But let's put that down for a second. His wife comes from a little bit of money, and the Newsoms on their tax returns, and let's divert to that for 1 second. Their tax returns, they report about $1 million a year in income, about 1.2. Okay. Much of which, by the way, comes from California because Jennifer makes it off
The taxpayer.
Off the taxpayers. So we'll put that aside for a second. But do you know what Gavin's 2023 tax return showed?
You're going to tell us, aren't you, Mike?
No, I'm not. And I'm not going to tell you what his 2022 tax return showed. And do you know why that is?
Has not shared that with the public? Really?
He has not shared a tax return, I believe, since 2021 for his 2020 taxes. He might have shared his 2022, and he said they'll share it with reporters, but only so they can go in and look at them. So after all the hyperbole that Gavin raised about, we're going to pass this law in California because we must have transparency, he hasn't shared his tax returns.
The only trans stuff he wants is to castrate children.
Well, actually, I'm going to get to a very interesting trans story here later on, but hold that thought. So, Kurt, I hear what you're saying, but if you make $1 million a year and by the way, a $9.6 to $3 million property, just so you know, your property tax alone in Marin County will be $112,000 a year. I'm not that smart. We looked it up. Your maintenance on the property will probably be $250,000 a year, and more than likely about $500,000 a year because it has 4 swimming pools. Yes, indeed, 1 per child. Okay, which for most of us who grew up with a garden hose, pretty impressive. All right.
4 swimming pools.
It's just, you can look up the property. It literally could house most of the homeless in Sacramento.
See, if this was back in the 80s, remember that show Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous with the English guy showing you all these big houses? I don't know. Some of those fancy houses weren't as big as this one, 4 swimming pools.
And instead of lifestyles of the rich and famous, we should start a new series called Lifestyles of the Corrupt and Inept, based on Gavin, because he might be
Well,
inept.
there are more Democrats besides Gavin that would fit in that.
Oh, but Gavin has this to an art. And if no, the fact that no one's really going except for some of us in the conservative media, as the old song went from the 80s, we were talking about 80 movies, things that make you go, that certainly is something that should make you go, because it does not add up. Literally, the cost between the two properties would almost exceed what Gavin Newsom's net income would be. And let's not forget, he's out of a job here in a couple of years. His net worth is estimated to be about 20 million. It doesn't add up that someone would loan him the money. And by the way, the real estate agent,
Pelosi's his relative. And
well,
in 30 years, she's made a couple $100 million.
She's worth a ton. And by the way, that's an inside stock trading. I get it. But Gavin Newsom, I think, and by the way, I don't like Nancy Pelosi. She probably had a lot of insider stock trading tips, but let's focus on Gavin for 1 second. His behested payments, we talked about this last show, remember? Is it coming back to you now? His behested payments total about 260 million a year. And a lot of those donors, including law firms that make donations to charities, such as like the ones that Jennifer is president for, it's corruption in plain sight. And there's a lot to look at it. So my kind of point is the shiny object that he wants the public to look at. I'm fighting for California. Why paying off my law cronies? Probably has a lot to do. So the press will rush over here and look at that and not dive too deeply into behested payments, no bid contracts he awarded during COVID, and other crimes against the state that I'm pretty sure Gavin took somewhere along the line. I might be bold in saying that, but Gavin has pushed the envelope of the law along with Rob Bonta, who's literally gotten. By the way, Gavin just got fined $10,000 for not reporting some of the vested payments in time. I think it might have been 100,000. Somebody will have to fact check me, but for Gavin, it's a rounding error. Go ahead, Scott.
That's his campaign. He doesn't care. It's not his money. It's donor money.
Remind people, behested is a 2-bit word for when you ask for money for a third party entity, usually a nonprofit. They have you reported as a politician in California so that you don't sit there and say, hey, why don't you give a couple $1 million to my wife's charity that she's the CEO of, and they all donate $20 million plus to it. That's what Jennifer does, right? She runs a nonprofit, the first partner, as they call her.
Yes, well, let's talk about that. The first partner does run, but keep going, Scott. You're doing a good job explaining this.
So you have behested payments. So if he doesn't report them, it's kind of like, well, is he getting any kind of a feedback or, cutback on that? That's why they have him report it. So by not reporting it, basically he's hiding income of his own, corrupt payoff type income, Biden crime family type income.
And by the way, right in the lines of doing that, Jennifer Sybil, or Jennifer Newsom, depending what you want to call her, whatever the hell her name is.
And some things we probably can't say on family TV here.
Well, we can. This isn't family TV, but we won't, Kurt. Okay.
We do have.
Yes. Her charity, where she makes more than the governor per year on the last declared income we saw, got these contracts for movies that have to be distributed in many public schools, which are paying for these movies, documentaries as they call them, with our tax dollars, by the way, to her NGO, commonly known as a nonprofit, about why Sam could be Sally. So she's actually distributing that narrative in our schools with our taxpayer dollars, with the movies that she makes funded.
Child grooming videos that she gets paid.
Sam
government
can't be
dollars.
Sally, guys. Sorry.
Hold on. Hold on, Kurt. I'm going to take issue with that. And I'm going to tell you right now, what a great lead into another story I saw right before coming on here. You guys know about the Supreme Court case that's up right now about transgenderism in Tennessee, right?
Yep.
It was heard today.
Okay. Did you hear about the lawyer who's arguing it?
Some pervert, I think.
It's a bearded lady. You can't make this up.
You mean you're talking about a circus clown, the bearded lady, right?
You
Wait a
read
minute.
that.
At least the circus clown, the bearded lady, was a legitimate biological woman who had a beard. In this case, it's a biological man with a beard pretending to be a woman.
Well, but Justice Alito had a great question. He asked if this transgenderism was an immutable characteristic, because that's part of the civil rights law. So he was laying a trap for her.
Did she fall into it? Did he fall into it?
Yet.
Sorry.
We're
gonna go with the it on this show, okay? Because I don't want to
I
get
like Cousin It from the Addams Family.
Yeah, let's just go with Cousin It from the Addams Family. But guys, you have to wonder. I mean, there's a point where the left is arrogant, and I was gonna jump to this story because I read that. I'm like, okay. If you're going to argue before the Supreme Court, I don't care what the issue is, in the American Civil Liberties Union, and I'm not even going to say arrogant enough, I've got to go with stupid enough, is going to send in a bearded transvestite lady or man or whatever the hell it is.
Whatever.
To argue the case. You've got my comment is like, really? Really?
I mean, I don't think that's going to be an impressive presentation. Is that what you're getting at, Mike?
I'm wearing a tie tonight, not for you gentlemen, but because I had to speak today. And because I speak at a thing there, I try to dress up, look nice, smell good, and I even comb my hair occasionally. Okay? So just in general, you want to kind of make an appearance to kind of impress the crowd I was speaking in front of. Republican Exchange Club in Riverside. Fair enough. Why would you send a beard?
I mean,
why?
It's really sad that you even have to say the words biological male. It's like a male's a male is a male. I don't care what you call it. You're born with the hardware. You're a male. God gave it to you.
Look, guys, if you're an adult male, it's like these idiot Democrats are saying, well, you ask them, what is a woman? And they have trouble answering what a woman is. If you're an adult and you don't know what a woman is, you're either stupid, mentally ill, or you're just incredibly unaware of the real world.
Or Supreme Court justice.
Well, like that moron they confirmed.
Let me not leave out one of the most amazing arguments that the bearded it, let's leave it at that, made in front of the court today. That toddlers know whether or not they are a transvestite when they're like 2 to 3 years old.
That's crazy.
How does he
know that? Wait a minute. They don't let children drive till a certain age. You can't buy alcohol. You can't buy a gun. You can't contract till you're 18. Why? Because they know
Scott, I hate to break this to you.
The judgment to make important
decisions. At 2 years old, I wasn't probably potty trained. Okay, I wasn't even allowed to go. This is 2 years old. I don't know. You can't even reach the counter with a fake ID, dude. Okay, I mean, we're talking toddlers here. So I want you to really frame this picture. The bearded it is arguing in front of the Supreme Court that toddlers know whether they are the wrong sex in their body. And I'm just going to stop there. And for everybody out there, you owe me gratitude for giving you a lot of comedic material provided to you by the liberals.
But
okay,
on a serious point here, Any adult that wants to castrate a child, either chemically or surgically, is a criminal engaging in child mutilation and abuse and should be given the death penalty, in my view.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know what this Supreme Court decision is all about, what happened in Tennessee is they passed a law in the state legislature that minors cannot receive gender changing surgeries,
Castration surgeries,
or castration or chemical castration. You're not allowed to do any of that, whether you're an adult or not, to a minor, period. Then you had some moron district court said, no, we're going to stay that because we think you can. And then thankfully the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals sat there and said, no, it's within the state's purview to pass laws this way, and tough crap. So then of course the liberals appealed it. Bearded Lady appealed it to the Supreme Court, and that's the arguments they made today. And we won't find out their decision probably till summer. But I suspect that even if they decide in our favor, which is normal, right? Basically, I think they're going to sit there and say, okay, the states can pass a law in this regard. So what's California going to do? They're going to say, well, if you live in Tennessee and they don't allow you to mutilate your kids, come to California. We'll pay for them to travel here. We'll pay for their operations. We'll call it a sex change vacation, just like they do for abortions, right? If you can't get an abortion in Texas, Tennessee, or one of these other states, California taxpayers will pay their way to come to California and get a free abortion. We'll kill your kids free of charge. We'll cut your kids' nuts off free of charge.
Now, by the way, Kurt, Scott and I came up with a great plan today to cut down our travel expenses. And for all of you out there, if you plan on
I'm afraid
attending
to ask.
Trump's inauguration and you're from California, we would like to cut your plane fare by 50%. And I want to cover this plan very carefully because this is the liberals' point of view. I would go to the Trump inauguration and buy a one-way ticket. And then when it's time to come back to California, I would simply call up my Democratic legislature and say, hey, I'm a guy, but I think I'm pregnant. And I'd like to come back to California and get a sex change, and why I'm at it, why not an abortion? Because apparently, according to them, and they're going to fly me back for free and probably put me up into a hotel for a couple days when then I can go, oops, I was wrong. Must had too much to drink at the inauguration party. Kurt, what do you think of that plan?
Not sure that's going to work, Mike.
Yeah, but that's assuming that you actually want to come back to California. You may just buy a ticket and not come back. All right.
Isn't it interesting though? That's the logic that they're following. And you've got to remember, funny and as comedic as it sounds, this is the problem that we have in California today. And I won't want to say Democrats, I want to say the insane left, because many middle of the road Democrats are going like, really, enough of this crap. Okay? Really, enough of this crap.
Seen one of those. Do you have an example?
Well, we've got examples where they're talking about actually the Democrats, what's his name? Mark Berman, who I'm not exactly who wears a big bow tie. And I've been in hearings against Scott Berman, not necessarily a fan of Scott Berman's, but he actually is the one that proposed legislation that would limit the number of bills that the state legislature could propose to something, even though it's 25 each per year, because they're trying to pass up to 5,000 bills a year. And the reason that has to do with this subject matter is many of these insane Democrats who are extreme, and there's probably about 20 of them that make up a chunk of their supermajority, have to find something that's a weird bill for them to pass, right? So they're continuously writing legislation that's beyond belief.
So by the way, they were allowed to write 50 bills each. The current limit is 35.
Correct. And they want to limit that 25. And if you think of 50 bills each, that's an insane amount. So to show they're doing something, you
I don't
need
even
such.
think there should be a limit at all. If my legislator gets elected and wants to introduce bills, what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with that is California has too many laws now. And this is exactly the problem that we have today is that because we have an insane left, Kurt, I mean, let's talk about the laws coming into effect, which you sent us, I mean, time for the Kurt English segment of the show, some of the laws coming into effect in just 2025 around the corner.
Well, I like some of the ideas that have been floated for the new Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. And
That's
one
at
of
the
those,
federal level. I was referring to the state of California, right? Federal level.
I think it would be a good thing to implement at the state too. But one of the ideas was is that you had to get rid of two laws in order to implement one law, one new
Oh,
law.
that's actually, yes, absolutely.
That way we can get rid of some of those laws on the books that think, subsidizing buggy whips, all those current things that are still on the books, albeit ignored.
California? There's a law like that in California?
Lots of them.
There's an in California, again, I want you to get your arms around this. California gets to getting to the governor's desk. There's about 5,000 bills a year proposed. And I want you, both of you, to take a step back. I would like you to think of Kurt, you say they could pass any laws they want. Give me 10 things that really need to be changed statewide that are really important, that are worth bandwidth. They pass they propose 5,000 a year. They get out of committee about 2,000 a year that kind of get to Newsom's desk, about 2,000 pieces of legislation a year. That means in approximately the 8 years Gavin will be in office, we have about 16,000 new laws. And I want you to really think about that. Who the hell? And most of the major ones that you hear about don't really work out well. And we don't hear about a lot of the minor ones that cost us a tremendous amount of money.
Well, we've talked about a lot of those major ones over the last months. The electricity tax before you turn on a light bulb, putting tampons in boys' bathrooms, and hiding the attempt to castrate children from parents. I mean, the gas tax that's going to be increased through the California Air Resources Board. I mean, Mike, if people listen to this program, they're going to know about all that stuff.
Will, I want to think about the ones they don't know about, which is why I tell everybody out there, you need to look it up. And to answer your point, Kurt, we passed too many laws. California, I don't think you guys were with me. It's interesting at the CAGOP convention when I heard Kristi Noem speak, right? And we forget about North Dakota that she's governor of.
South
Dakota. Oh, I got the Dakota right. What do you want? The Lower Dakota. I'll call it the lower
Dakota, the warmer Dakota.
The warmer Dakota, yes.
Yeah.
The partially thawed out Dakota, and it's coming up soon. Their legislature not only meets part-time, they meet every other year. Yes, you heard correctly.
Yeah, there's a number of states like that.
Right. They meet every other year. We have a full-time legislature meeting every day, every year, coming up with basically a lot of that it's ridiculous. And so it's very hard for us as conservatives or even logical people, I don't know, conservatives, to keep up with what's being proposed. And that's kind of my point of this. We have too many laws. We on our side are against bigger government. Bigger government is a natural outgrowth of having more regulations, which reminds me to remind everybody out there that when Gavin Newsom says, well, it's the fifth largest economy in the world, we have the second, it's not really, and we have the second highest, only to Nevada, however you want to call it, unemployment rate in the country, and a lot more people than number one. And you know who our biggest employer is, Kurt?
Probably the government.
State of California.
The state government. And by the way, we would be, and I take affront to that because I'm very competitive. You guys know this. We should be #1 in unemployment. And the only reason we're getting beat by Nevada is their state legislature does not meet full time. If their state legislature meet full time and made more government jobs, you know what? I would accept that. But they're #1 simply because of the gambling industry. California is #2 with a lot more people, but our unemployment rate would be #1 if we didn't employ so many people in government, which is the outgrowth of having so many regulations. And many of these regulations are reward to the people that have contributed to Gavin and his campaigns.
We talked earlier about this arrangement between Jennifer Sybil Newsom, the first partner, and Gavin Newsom. And I was looking up online for her film. She does these documentary films, right? And then, of course, Governor Newsom buys them from her for the state to show in the 5,000 schools and hundreds of thousands of kids. But they've released 4 films. They all advocate gender justice, whatever the heck that is. And they have to pay $50 to $600 to screen these movies for the kids, right? No conflict of interest there. Do you realize there's 2.6 million students in these 5,000 schools, by the way? This is all from a California Globe article. But here's some of the things that they advocate, right? They have a movie that they call The Genderbread Person. And the genderbread
Well, at least
person
it's in the holiday spirit.
is for middle school movie, but it hammers strong feminist and gender justice messages for school kids ages 11 through 14. And this group, openthebooks.com, watched the movie. And they basically said the movie is not age appropriate for middle schoolers and really should not have any place in any school curriculum. It's pure propaganda. And it deals with feminist and gender justice, women as sex objects, girls in disempowered position, few female protagonists in movies, women and girls portrayed only seeking men, husbands, and they're trying to change society. And the thing that you were pointing out is that the way that Newsom does it is he takes taxpayer dollars, pays his cronies, in this case, his wife, to produce this propaganda of which Newsom appears in these movies himself, and then uses taxpayer dollars to pay for the making of them, distribution of them, and forces and indoctrinates the 2.6 million kids in the California school system, middle school system, to watch this crap. Hello.
Right. There's a lot
I can't
wrong
even
here.
say some of the stuff.
By the way, before I forget, Remus, we do have a caller in tonight. As you know, you can, when you go on I should start mentioning this at the beginning of these shows, you can participate in the shows by going to the link and acting like a caller on the radio shows that probably will be back doing again one day. But when you do come in on an iPhone, we ask you to identify yourself. We do have a screener here. So again, if you want to participate, we could elevate to ask me, Kurt, Scott, a question, or weigh in with your opinion, because we love to hear the public's opinion, but you do, like in any broadcast, have to identify who you are. But everybody is welcome to join in because we're California Free Radio. But as Scott always said, the People's House, we're also the People's Broadcasting System. I guess PBS isn't a good term these days, but I'll roll with it.
California Free Radio. Yes.
California Free Radio. But Scott, this is the problem we have here, right? That we watch this corruption in California in plain sight. And I want everybody to understand that Pelosi, Kurt, okay?
Your favorite.
Biden, yeah, they had 50, 60 years in federal office to steal, earn, build up their wealth. And somebody should ask a lot of questions about how people that have been in public service for 50 years manage to be worth that much money. Gavin Newsom is the mere governor of one state, but he's doing pretty good for himself at about 58, where he already has $14.5 million of real estate, which nobody knows where the money came from. And by the way, no one knows what cars he drives, but I'm going to guess they're gas powered. By the way, you guys like this? It is verified that he owns a Tesla sports car. Hey, okay. So that'll be interesting.
He owns a Tesla.
He owns a Tesla. He owns a Tesla. We don't know what other cars he owns, but he's got a large number of whatever there. Carrie, we see you're in here tonight. Thank you again for joining our studio audience. And Mr. or Mrs. iPhone, to be politically correct. We do welcome people. Raise your hand if you would like to call in and make a comment on the participants as part of our studio audience, because we'd love to hear what you have to say. Yes. Look, let's get real. Gavin drives around in state-owned vehicles that are powered by gas, lean, surrounded by armed guards with bullets against, while he tries to quash our Second Amendment rights, he's surrounded by armed guards. When he tries to tell us that our gasoline needs to go up by 65 cents a gallon to keep the air clean, he travels in a BAC big ass car. I'm going to go ahead and say it, paid for by with your state money everywhere he goes, and owns a really big piece of real estate. And let's not forget there, AOC, are you listening? Every time Gavin goes to China, flies all over the country, how's that carbon footprint working out for you? You know what I think we ought to give Gavin for Christmas?
Okay.
A free subscription to Zoom. Because I often wonder why he has to fly in with 16 people around him for a one-day meeting when I can barely afford to drive to the grocery store down the block to pick up my groceries. But Gavin flies all over with his money out of our state. Last I checked, he was governor of California, not governor of China. That's debatable.
That's because he uses OPM, other people's money.
Correct. But he's using it quite well. I want to give him credit where credit is due.
He goes in style.
He goes in style.
Did you say he drives a Tesla Roadster?
I believe he does. Well, he owns one. He never needs to use it because he has, quote, company cars, Hey, okay, known as a taxpayer's money, right? And there's a rumor running around, which I have not verified. I put out there this week, and you can look up the rumor on my X feed, that he also owns a Bentley and a few other cars. But Gavin has always kind of rode around in style. And he does send his kids to private school, which I understand, because my kids were young today, I probably wouldn't send them to public school either.
Oh
So
my God, I'm
Gavin,
a graduate, as our listeners and viewers know, of Los Angeles City schools. I would never send a child to Los Angeles City schools today. Never, ever. Or any
Kurt,
public school in
I've known you
California.
long enough to say, after meeting you, I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, you would never do that.
Never do that.
But for those of us that can't afford private school tuition, we're kind of screwed. We're paying the taxes.
Yeah,
and we can't-
homeschooling is a way better option.
Right.
That's
but then
what we're going to have, an initiative coming on the ballot called the CEO Act. And we've already have it written, which is basically the new version of school choice in California, because it's about time we gave the average person the ability that our rich governor has, and Bonta falling right behind him is basically stealing it in smaller chunks. We should go into Rob Bonta on a further show, right? Because he's learned from Gavin, who learned from Nancy, who probably taught Biden, and it's really hard to tell, but we've reached the point where we have corruption in plain sight in California. And for everyone out there, if you don't think you're being crushed by basically California royalty, which they think they are, you've got another thought coming. Gentlemen, we're winding down to our last 7 minutes here. Again, you can always call in every week. We'll be on the air with a 2 week break for the Christmas and New Year's here, but we'll be back with the show every week. We invite you to log in to the link that we sent you. Call in and give your opinion like we do on a radio show. We've got some very new and exciting stuff coming soon for the show as I don't say break away from KABC, but do some different stuff to expand our audience. But let's kind of roll to the end there. Kurt English in the orange shirt, because I still maintain you're dressed for Halloween.
I'm dressed for Thanksgiving. Couple
Oh,
California things. Turns out that a lot of different cities have minimum wages that are higher in California than the state minimum wage. A lot of them are liberal cities in the Bay Area. And that now there's going to be victim leave where you get paid time off if you're for either jury duty or if you're a victim of something. We're all victims of California government and how incompetent and corrupt it is. But what happens if somebody is on a trial for 3 months? So a little small business got to pay them to not be there?
Oh, wait a minute. The whole concept of victim pay, in other words, rather than stop the criminals and stick them in jail, they're going to say, oh, well, you were victimized. We'll pay you while you recuperate.
Oh, Scott, it's not just Californians that are being victimized by the Democrat crime wave. There was a British rock group that showed up here in California. They got robbed on the first day they were here.
What they do? They take the gate receipts from them? What's going on? The name of the rock group was the Beatles? No, wait, that's a little bit.
No, it was a different group you've never heard of. But my point is, welcome to California. Yes, indeed, they did.
And you know the anti-Semites at UCLA continue on. I guess there's a cultural affairs commissioner who warned against hiring Zionists, which is what the Islamic terrorist name is for Jews.
Yeah, but no, they're not anti-Semites at UCLA, right? They're not anti-Semite. They're anti-Zionist, not anti-Semites.
My solution is privatize the University of California system and the Cal State system. Privatize them.
Or just sell them off.
Close them down.
Or close them down if they don't comply. Hey, you saw the San Francisco State University is losing students. They had to fire a third of their faculty. It's like,
well, I have it from an inside source that even at USC, 30% of the professors are radical liberals. So since we fired our president, hopefully we can fire 30% of the faculty too.
Well, if they're actually having to have to be responsible to the consumers, the whole concept of market approach to things, and they lose customers because who wants to pay all this money for these products? And it makes sense to me. So do we have a caller? Is that what you're telling me, Mike?
That's okay. They haven't screened it yet, so we'll get to them in a second here. Kurt, it amazes me every week, and you come up with great stories, almost how California supplies its own comedic relief. But more importantly, it's going to come out more, especially after January 20th, how poorly California is run. And Newsom is literally going to be running for his political life. And we have lots more to follow in the next coming up months. Scott, before I go to the closing blast, and thank you for clarifying in light of what we've talked about that you are the straight Scott.
Yeah, we wouldn't want you to be a trans Scott or a gay Scott.
Well, he does have a little beard. He could argue in front of the Supreme Court. But go ahead and give us your closing blast on this post-Thanksgiving show.
We call ourselves California Free Radio because we still believe in California, and the whole concept of reaching out and letting the light of day be the disinfectant. Sunlight's the best disinfectant, and there's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of disease going on in Sacramento. I ran for the 73rd Assembly District, lost. It was a long shot. I did okay. It's a long-term process. If we're going to take back this state, we need to take it back district by district. And I think that the California Republican Party is a shambles. I look forward to talking more and more about what to do to fix it. I think they've done a terrible job of showing people why they should be Republicans. Believe it or not, a lot of people in this last cycle changed their registration back to Republican. a lot of people that were declined to state, no party preference, and even Democrats switched to the Republican Party because they realized the only discussion that's going on today and arguing on the issues is the Republican Party. The Democrat Party is monolithic, led by a bunch of elitists, those 20 or so radicals that you see up in Sacramento out of the 120 legislators. They run the whole show. And that's what we're trying to change. And that's what we're trying to inform people as they listen to us so that they can get informed and they can help us change the state. I haven't given up on the state yet. Maybe close, but I haven't given up yet. And I hope that our watchers, listeners won't give up either.
Scott, the thing we need to fix, though, is we lost several congressional seats in California because of ballot fraud. They kept counting and counting and counting.
Absolutely. And I meant to get to that this show. We'll get to that next show about what's wrong with the election system. But what I hope we focused on this show to show you is that no matter how you cut, slice, and dice it, our government, the people that run our government in California, starting with one name you know the most, and that's Gavin Newsom, are not shining example of civics. Even if they're quasi-legally correct, there's a lot going on there. It's up to you each day to do something about it. And you can start by spreading the word, either sharing this on social media, getting more people think you carry an iPhone. Hi, Carrie. Yes, I know you. The GOP Carrie in Mencino. To spread the word, because everything starts with a precipitating moment, with a bright light that goes on in someone's head to moving on to the next person. We may be a republic, but we're built on the foundation of a democracy, which means we are built on the will of the people. And for everyone out there, I don't really give a damn who owns the real estate that the Capitol is on in Sacramento. You do. And I don't really give a damn who Gavin Newsom thinks he's beholden to, whether it's a big pharmaceutical company or some school system somewhere that is paying his wife money, etc. He's beholden to you. And I mean you as the individual. Everybody out there, it's your damn state. And we made a few steps this election cycle. And next time we need to take some broad strides. And that walk begins now. And we'll continue this journey next week, Wednesday at 6:30. Thank you and